Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real. There comes a time in every woman's life when she has to stop waiting to be chosen and start becoming the one who can't be ignored. You want to know how you force him to choose you? You stop trying so hard. That's right. Stop chasing, stop proving, stop begging. Because when you know your worth, you don't have to say a word. Your presence demands respect. See, some of y'all got it twisted thinking if you show him more love, cook more meals, send longer texts, or cry harder, he'll finally wake up and pick you. But the truth is, what makes a man choose you is when you stop auditioning and start owning the room. Ladies and gentlemen, let me keep it real with you tonight. You want to know the number one thing that'll make a man sit up, pay attention, and realize he can't let you go? It's not how pretty you are. It's not how good you cook, how much you do for him, or how long you've been around. It's your self-respect. That's right. A woman with self-respect will always make a man stop and think twice. Because when a woman truly knows who she is, when she walks with that quiet confidence, she becomes unforgettable. A man can find beauty anywhere, but self-respect, that's rare. That's powerful. That's what forces him to choose. See, too many women make the mistake of thinking that if they give more, love harder, or hang on tighter, they'll finally become his choice. But you can't love a man into choosing you. You can't bend yourself, break yourself, or lower your value and expect him to see your worth. He sees your worth when you see your worth. That's the moment everything changes. When you stop trying to convince him, start chasing him, and start respecting yourself, you shake something in his spirit because now you're not just another option, you're the standard. Let me tell you what happens when a woman stands in her self-respect. She stops answering late-night texts that lead nowhere. She stops making excuses for disrespect. She stops giving energy to half efforts and broken promises. She doesn't wait around for clarity. She is the clarity. And let me tell you something about men. When a man sees that, when he sees that you ain't desperate, that you're not afraid to be alone, that you have your own peace, he starts thinking differently. He starts wondering what he's about to lose. Self-respect means you stop explaining why you won't settle. You just don't settle. It means you walk away from confusion. It means your time, your energy, your love, it all comes with boundaries. And that boundary, that's your power. That's what sets you apart because most people don't have the courage to draw a line, but you do. And that line tells him something. It tells him you either meet me where I am or you watch me leave. And the moment he realizes that you mean it, that's when he starts to choose. You don't need to scream, cry, or beg to get his attention. That's not how a man chooses. He chooses when he sees that walking away from you would be his biggest mistake. He chooses when he knows that another man would be lucky to have the chance he's taking for granted. And trust me, nothing drives a man crazier than realizing he might have lost a woman who had the strength to choose herself. And look, self-respect doesn't mean you don't love him. It means you love you enough not to lose yourself over him. It means you're not available to be mistreated. It means you know what you bring to the table and you're not afraid to eat alone. That kind of strength, that kind of grace, that's rare. And when a man sees a woman like that, he either rises to meet her or he moves out of the way. But either way, she don't lose. So ladies and gentlemen, if you really want to force him to choose you, stop focusing on him and start focusing on yourself. Don't try to compete with other women. Don't try to become what you think he wants. Just be who you are and honor yourself enough not to bend, because when you stand tall in your self-respect, you don't chase anyone. You attract everything meant for you. And a real man will see that, and he won't waste another second trying to decide. He'll know, and he'll choose. Ladies and gentlemen, let me break something down for you tonight, something every woman needs to understand if he wants to truly stand out, not just be another option. If you want to force a man to choose you, not by manipulation, not by pressure, but by presence, then listen closely. It all starts with self-respect. That right there is your foundation. Because when you respect yourself, when you value yourself, when you stop accepting less than what you deserve, you instantly shift the energy. You're no longer trying to be picked. You're letting people show if they're even worthy of standing beside you. Now let me tell you the truth most people don't want to hear. A man will never value a woman who begs for his love. It doesn't matter how loyal you are, how much time you've invested, or how deep your feelings go. If you're out here pleading to be seen, chasing his affection, waiting on breadcrumbs, you're handing over all your power. And let me tell you something I've learned after watching years of relationships unfold. What you tolerate teaches people how to treat you. If you keep showing up for someone who doesn't show up for you, you're telling them they don't have to change. They don't have to choose. They can keep you on the shelf while they explore other options, because you've made it clear you'll stay regardless. But when a woman stops begging, stops chasing, and starts reclaiming her worth, the entire game changes. That's when he starts paying attention. That's when he starts asking questions, because suddenly you're not answering every call. You're not jumping through hoops. You're not available for his convenience anymore. And that silence, that distance, that strength, it speaks louder than any words ever could. A man may not say it out loud, but when you pull back, when you stop proving yourself, it forces him to look at what he's been taking for granted. The truth is, men are wired to pursue what they respect, not what they pity, not what's always available, but what makes them rise. And when you stop begging for love and start setting the standard, you don't just grab his attention, you shift the dynamic. He starts to realize that you're not desperate. You're not waiting around for him to see your value. You already know who you are, and you're not afraid to walk if you're not treated right. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about games. This isn't about acting like you don't care when you do. It's about showing that your love has value, that it's not something to be played with, that it's not something you give away just because someone shows up halfway. A woman who respects herself doesn't need to shout, doesn't need to cry, doesn't need to argue to prove her place in a man's life. She just moves differently. And a man who's paying attention, a man who sees the quality in you, he knows he better step up or risk losing you. The moment you stop begging for love, you create space for real love to show up. Not just attention, not just lust, not just someone who wants you when it's convenient, but someone who chooses you fully, completely, and without hesitation. And you don't get that kind of love by lowering your standards. You get it by raising your energy, your boundaries, your expectations. So when you stop chasing and start respecting yourself, when you pull your energy back from places where it isn't reciprocated, when you make it clear that you won't settle for halfway love, you give that man one or two choices. He either rises to meet you or he watches you walk away. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, when you carry yourself with that kind of self-worth, when you stop begging and start becoming, that man won't just notice. You'll force him to decide. And if he's real, he'll choose you. Every time. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get straight to it. You want to force a man to choose you? Then you got to understand how powerful you are when you stop giving away your energy to someone who hasn't even earned your time. It's not about proving your love or trying to convince someone to value you. It's about knowing who you are and walking like you know what you bring to the table. That's what separates the woman who gets chosen from the woman who gets overlooked. It's not looks. It's not effort. It's self-respect. Self-respect is the foundation of everything. When you respect yourself, you naturally create boundaries. You don't chase anyone. You don't over-explain. You don't shrink yourself hoping to be noticed. You already know your worth. And that kind of presence demands attention without saying a word. That's the moment a man starts noticing you differently. Because now, you're not just available, you're rare. And anything rare always has value. But here's the real problem. A lot of women confuse love with sacrifice. They think that if they give enough, prove themselves enough, wait long enough, eventually he'll choose them. But a man doesn't fall in love with the one who gives him the most. He falls in love with the one who makes him rise, the one who doesn't beg for love, but commands it with grace. Let me say this clearly. When you beg for love, when you plead to be seen, when you stay in places where your presence is ignored, you're teaching him that your love comes cheap, that he can treat you anyway and you still be there. But when you stop chasing, when you stop explaining, and instead start moving with calm confidence, something changes. The shift is in your energy. You're no longer seeking his validation. You're not afraid to walk away. You're showing him that love is a choice, not a negotiation. And let me tell you what happens when you pull back emotionally, that distance, that space. It creates curiosity. It makes him wonder what you're thinking, why you're not reacting, why you're not fighting for something he took for granted. It makes him look at you differently because now the power dynamic has changed. You're no longer the woman waiting, you're the woman deciding. And that right there, that makes all the difference. You see, emotional distance isn't about playing hard to get. It's about giving yourself room to see clearly. When you're always available, always answering, always reacting, you lose control of the emotional balance. But when you step back, when you become calm and unbothered, he feels it. He senses the shift. And it makes him take a hard look at his own behavior. A man doesn't start valuing you when you talk louder. He starts valuing you when your silence speaks louder than your words ever could. You don't have to scream your worth. You just have to embody it. The moment you stop reacting to every little thing, stop feeding into drama, and start moving like someone who knows what they want, you create a gap between where you are and where he left you. And in that gap, he starts to question. He starts to realize. He starts to feel. That's what emotional distance does. It wakes him up. It forces him to ask himself, what am I doing? What if she walks away for good? And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. When a man really thinks he might lose a woman with self-respect, who doesn't beg, who's emotionally strong and centered, he'll either grow up and choose her or step aside so she can be chosen by someone who will. And when you carry yourself with that kind of quiet power, you won't have to force anything. You'll simply be the only real choice he has. Ladies and gentlemen, if you really want to know how to make a man choose you, let's start with something most people overlook. You don't have to force love when you carry yourself with real self-respect. That's where it all begins. When a woman walks into a room and she knows who she is, she doesn't have to beg for attention. She doesn't have to chase a man. Her presence speaks before she even opens her mouth. A woman with self-respect carries an energy that says, I know my value. I know what I deserve, and I will not settle. And let me tell you something. That is powerful. That kind of energy makes a man stop and think. But here's the catch. Too many women fall into the trap of thinking the more they give, the more they prove themselves, the more a man will choose them. That if they hold on tighter, cry a little more, bend just a little further, he'll finally wake up and see their worth. But the truth is, a man doesn't choose a woman because she begged for love. He chooses the woman who knows she doesn't need to beg. He chooses the woman who makes him want to be better. And that never happens when you're trying to convince him to stay. That happens when you're strong enough to let him go if he won't rise to your level. Now let's talk about emotional distance, because that's the part people forget. When you're always available, always replying, always chasing, you become predictable, and predictable does not create desire. But when you step back, not with bitterness, not with attitude, but with calm confidence, you change the atmosphere. That space you create makes him wonder what he's missing. It makes him notice how quiet things have gotten. It makes him ask, did I mess this up? And in that space, curiosity is born. And where curiosity exists, desire grows. But don't think emotional distance means ignoring someone or playing games. It means you're no longer allowing your emotions to be controlled by how someone else treats you. It means you're choosing peace over chaos. And a woman who can control her emotions, who can stay calm and silent when she needs to, who can pull back her energy instead of begging, that's a woman who cannot be replaced. She forces a man to pay attention. She forces him to ask himself if he's doing enough, if he's giving enough, if he's even worthy of staying in her life. And this is where standards come in. See, your standards are not about being demanding or difficult. Your standards are your instruction manual. They tell people how to treat you. If you allow inconsistency, you teach him that showing up sometimes is okay. If you stay quiet when you're disrespected, You teach him that disrespect comes with no consequence. But when you raise the bar, when you communicate through your actions that you won't accept anything less than effort, consistency, and respect, you shift the entire dynamic. You don't even have to argue. You don't have to scream. You just move different. And that difference is what makes him choose or lose. Because let me tell you something, when a man is faced with a woman who respects herself, who doesn't beg, who gives him space to feel her absence, and who holds firm to her standards, he only has two choices, step up or step aside. And if he doesn't, someone else will. Someone else will recognize that glow, that strength, that standard, and suddenly the man who thought he had time, who thought he had options, realizes he just lost something rare. So if you want to force him to choose you, don't waste your energy trying to be perfect. Be real, be grounded. Be a woman who refuses to shrink, who knows her worth, who doesn't overextend for anyone. That kind of woman doesn't need to be chosen. She becomes the only choice. Ladies and gentlemen, when you want to know how to make a man choose you, the answer ain't about pressure or pleading. It's about positioning. You don't win by chasing. You win by standing. When a woman stands in her self-respect, when she knows what she brings to the table, she doesn't wait around hoping for someone to recognize her value. She becomes the type of woman you can't help but recognize. Self-respect is magnetic. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't explain. It just is. And when a woman carries herself like that, she changes the room without even trying. Now, don't get it twisted. Some of y'all think if you just give more, sacrifice more, love harder, he'll finally wake up and choose you. But it doesn't work that way. A man doesn't choose a woman because she lowers herself to fit in his world. He chooses the woman who stands tall in her own world. A man values the woman who doesn't chase him because that kind of woman has already chosen herself. She's not desperate. She's not emotional every time he pulls back. She doesn't fall apart when he gets distant. She stays centered. That kind of woman doesn't need to force love. Her presence makes a man step back and rethink everything. Emotional distance plays a role here, not to manipulate, but to reset the balance. When you constantly show up for someone who's inconsistent with you, they get comfortable. But when you pull back your energy, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of clarity, they feel it. Silence gets louder when it comes from a woman who used to give everything. That distance creates a vacuum. It makes him wonder. It forces him to feel your absence. And in that silence, he starts to hear everything you were saying, not with your words, but with your actions, your standards, your grace. Your standards are not walls. They're doors with keys. They tell him how to access you. If you accept inconsistency, you'll keep getting it. If you make excuses for poor behavior, it continues. But when you hold yourself to a certain level and don't budge, you teach him what it takes to stay in your life. And you don't have to announce your standards, live them. You don't have to tell him you won't tolerate disrespect. Show him by removing yourself from disrespectful spaces. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop giving your energy to nonsense, you give it back to yourself. That glow, that peace, that energy shift. He sees it. He feels it. And now he's not just deciding whether he likes you. He's deciding whether he's man enough for you. Now I want to touch on something important: confidence without confrontation. That's the secret sauce. You don't have to fight to prove your worth. You don't have to scream, "Pick me." You just have to move like someone who knows she can't be duplicated. That confidence, when it's quiet and calm, speaks louder than any argument. A woman who can walk away without slamming doors, who can smile and protect her peace without explaining herself, is a woman who forces a man to decide. Because now he knows he can't play around. He knows he either chooses you or loses you. So the most powerful thing you can do is remain composed, remain firm, and remain true to yourself. When you do that, you don't chase love, you attract it. And the man who's meant for you, he won't risk losing you once he sees you walking like you already know who you are. That's how you force him to choose you, by becoming the one he can't afford to lose. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something that'll shift the way you look at love. If you're sitting around wondering how to make a man choose you, it's time to flip the script. You don't make a man choose you by giving him more of you. You make him choose you by giving more to yourself. When you walk in your self-respect, when you stop begging to be seen, when you stop waiting to be noticed, you create an energy that speaks before you even open your mouth. That's the kind of presence that stops a man in his tracks. A man doesn't commit to a woman who clings. He doesn't stay with the one who pleads. He doesn't value the one who's always trying to convince him of her worth. No, he chooses the woman who already knows her worth, whether he sees it or not. A man values the woman who doesn't beg for love. Because when you're out here trying to prove yourself, giving chance after chance, lowering your standards just to keep someone around, you're telling him he doesn't have to choose. Because you've already decided for both of you, you've already said, you can treat me any way you want and I'll still stay. And there's no power in that. But when you pull back, when you go quiet, when you create emotional distance, not out of revenge, not to play games, but because you finally chose you, he feels that shift. That silence speaks volumes. That pause makes him wonder where you went. And the moment he starts wondering, you've got his attention. Emotional distance creates curiosity, and curiosity creates desire. He starts to think about what he had, what he might lose, and why he feels the space so deeply. Let's talk about your standards, because that's how people learn how to treat you. If you don't have standards, you'll accept anything. You'll allow confusion, inconsistency, late replies, half-hearted effort. And the longer you accept that, the more permanent it becomes. But when you hold yourself to a higher level and stick to it, you send a message without saying a word. You teach him that your time is valuable. Your presence is not a free trial. Your energy is earned, not expected. You don't have to scream about what you want. Just stop entertaining what you don't. Put this in. Let what you want and the key to all this is confidence without confrontation. You don't have to fight to prove your point. You don't need to throw his words back in his face or start dramatic arguments. Confidence is calm, it's quiet, it's steady. You let your actions speak. You don't respond to games. You don't chase confusion. You simply step away. And that silent shift, that is what forces a man to make a decision. Because now he's not just wondering where you went, he's wondering how to get back to you. He's wondering if someone else will recognize what he overlooked. And the fear of losing something valuable forces clarity in a way that words never can. Your silence can do more than your shouting ever could. Silence is powerful. When you stop explaining yourself, when you stop trying to fix everything, when you stop being the one to reach out, follow up, and hold it all together, he has to sit with himself. He has to ask, did I do enough? And in that silence, he'll find his answer. If he sees the value, he'll move. If he doesn't, your silence will still protect your peace. So if you want to force him to choose you, stop making noise and start making moves. Pour into yourself. Stay calm. Walk with your head high. Let your self-respect lead the way. Because the woman who respects herself, who refuses to beg, who knows when to pull back, who lives by her standards, who speaks through silence and not shouting, she doesn't have to compete. She becomes the only option worth choosing.